Ladies and gentlemen, Ball Dominant is back, and with only 14 days left until the NBA season begins, it's only right to do a power rankings for the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference. And with some recent news about how Kawhi feels about his new teammates, and also LeBron James making clapbacks on Twitter, and RJ Hampton being accused of some very bad things on social media and on camera, it's only right that we talk about it. And if you guys like consistent, high-level basketball conversations, you guys are in the right place. Ball Dominant Episode 7 is upon us. Let's get started. Before we get this episode started, I just want to let everyone know who has not been informed yet. Shams Charania, if I'm saying his name correctly, is now the new NBA insider, senior NBA insider, taking the official place of Woj after he retires. I just think this is a very big accomplishment for anybody who's trying to be a senior insider or an insider in basketball. I definitely think the NBA is in good hands with Shams and how he is able to report things on time and to completely be inside of the NBA world. It definitely takes a lot of dedication, just being somebody who has been in the content world for about a year now, only on YouTube for about 4 or 5 months, but on TikTok for about a year now. That's something that takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of nights where you're going to have to be up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, especially after the Paul George signing, where I think this is back-to-back times he has made a free agent announcement in like 2 or 3 in the morning. So Kawhi Leonard has been asked about his new teammates, because the Clippers are going into an entirely new era of basketball with Paul George no longer being there and now having a guy in James Harden, Norman Powell. You just bring in Derrick Jones Jr. The Clippers are going to struggle, in my opinion, but that's for my Western Conference power rankings video that probably won't be dropping until Thursday. But I think this team has a lot of questions. And on top of Kawhi Leonard saying that nobody has stood out to him so far, especially since you're not going to be on the floor with them in the early part of the season, I just don't think that is the right thing to say. Now, Kawhi Leonard is his own man. He can say whatever he wants, but to say no one has stood out to him so far when you're trying to lead a new era of Clippers basketball in a new arena, that's just not the proper thing to say, in my opinion, as a number one on a team. And Kawhi Leonard, he's never really been looked at in his career as the leader or as a guy that can be a true leader in the NBA. But making a statement like this for your team who is already going to be struggling out the gate, this is not a team I think can make the playoffs or be a team that can make a run in the playoffs for sure. But I just don't think that sends the right message to the fans of the Clippers. I don't think that sends the right message to the players. And obviously, nobody is going to stand out because this is not the best team. But to go out to the media and say something like this, I don't think it's right. And this is not something I'm going to overreact to. I haven't really seen a lot of people talk about it, but I just wanted to give my opinion on it because if you're a player that has constantly been inconsistent when it comes to being on the floor, I don't think you are in the place to say that nobody has stood out to you. Yes, we know how good you can be when you are healthy, but consistently, that just has not been the case. So to bring up nobody standing out to you, where you could have just said, I think we have a very talented roster. I think this is a team that can make a lot of noise in the Western Conference, especially just being confident or being positive for your teammates. I think that could have been the much better route instead of saying that nobody is standing out to you. I think that is false. I think that was completely wrong. The next topic I want to talk about is RJ Hampton. He was caught on video saying some very ugly things to the mother of his child. There's also been some claims that he took him without any pacifiers, not knowing when he ate, when the last time he slept. And that is something that obviously is a very bad look as somebody that represents the NBA, as somebody that's looked at as a high player in the NBA. Well, I wouldn't say a high player in the NBA, but somebody who has a high profile in basketball, period, especially to be making it to the NBA. I just don't think that's the best look. And admitting to it on camera, it's going to get ugly. It's going to get very ugly because you took the child without permission. I don't know if you necessarily need the most permission since you are the father of the child, but if something like that could be very serious, and it's probably not going to be taken lightly at all by the NBA. And I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between if a guy like RJ Hampton has done it, and I think between a guy like Anthony Edwards. I think the NBA is in a more or is in a bigger position with RJ Hampton that he has done it to where the NBA can make an example out of RJ Hampton and be like, okay, we're going to steer clear, or NBA players in general should just steer clear from that aspect. And this is something that isn't right. If RJ Hampton really did put his hands on the mother of his child, that is completely wrong. And that's something that now is brought to light because you admitted to it on camera. And it's just not the greatest look. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So since we are now done with the recent NBA news, I kind of want to talk about the thing that you guys came for, the Eastern Conference Power Rankings from 1 to 15. You know, I took every single team into account when making this video, the new additions that they made in the offseason, how I think they're going to fit together, and I put it into a 15-team power ranking. We will be doing the Western Conference on Thursday, so let's get into it. At number 15, I have the Brooklyn Nets. This is a team that may have the worst starting five in the NBA, with their projected starting lineup being Dennis Schroeder, Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Nicholas Claxton. Ben Simmons might work his way into the starting lineup, but as of day one, I do not think he will be in the starting lineup. This is a team that's very young. They chose their direction this offseason after trading away Mikal Bridges, bringing in 5 first-round picks from that trade, and then also getting their picks back from the Houston Rockets. And now that they are in that position, they are going to be as bad as possible for the next 2 seasons, where they have their 25 and 26 first-round picks, so they can bring in their number 1 and their number 2. And then with the draft picks that they have acquired from New York, they'll be able to draft some guys that can play around that, so they can be in contingents maybe in a few seasons. And I don't think this team is going to be good. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this team, but there are some young pieces that we can look at. Can Derek Whitehead become something? Can Noah Clowney become something? Can Jalen Wilson become something, who won Summer League MVP? I think those guys are going to have a lot to show for this season. Can Cam Thomas become a player that can produce a high level of winning basketball? Can he get better as a distributor? Can he get better as a defender? You know, I just think there is a lot more to this game now than just scoring the basketball. And if you play like that, if you're an undersized guard who can only really score the ball, I don't think that is a method to win in today's game. I think that's probably just a 6-man, if you ask me. Next team I have is the Washington Wizards, who definitely piled up on some young talent this offseason. They brought in Alex Sarr. They brought in Bub Carrington. They also brought in Keyshawn George. I think those young players, especially adding that, you have Bilal Coulibaly now. Corey Kispert is a great 3-and-D guy, in my opinion. Malcolm Brogdon is a veteran leader that can mentor Bub Carrington, and I think Jonas Valanciunas can do the same for Alex Sarr. But when we look at some of the things that Washington, or some of the questions that the Washington Wizards have, you have a guy in Kyle Kuzma who's probably going to get traded. Jordan Poole should be traded. Jonas Valanciunas should also be traded as well. And I think Alex Sarr is better off at the power forward position. I mean, in summer league, he just really struggled with putting the ball on the floor. He tried to shoot more threes than I would like him to. I would love for him to be a lob threat, somebody that can finish down low and through contact. And I don't really care for him putting the ball on the floor or shooting threes in his rookie season. Now, if he shows signs of that, maybe we can move forward with it, but that would not be my main priority if I'm the Washington Wizards. I don't want you putting the ball on the floor, and I don't want you trying to space the floor. That's not something I'm asking for if I'm Washington. But for some positive notes, I think Bilal Coulibaly and Alex Sarr can be a defensive duo that is very, very good in the near future. I think with Bilal's speed and length, he is going to be a great defender, and the same can be said for Alex Sarr. I think he's mobile. I think he's a great shot blocker, and I would love to see him be a little bit more physical, but that's going to come with time. At number 13, I have the Detroit Pistons with Cade Cunningham, their recent draft pick in Ron Holland. You also bring in Tobias Harris. You brought in Malik Beasley. These guys are going to be great floor spacers. You also brought in Tim Hardaway Jr. But once again, with this starting lineup, I still don't think there is enough floor spacing. I think their starting lineup is probably going to be Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asor Thompson, Tobias Harris, and Jalen Duren. I think there's a false accusation around Jalen Duren's name. He is not a good defender. He's not good in the post. He's an okay shot blocker, solid rebounder. I just don't think he's a great defender. Jaden Ivey is very streaky from beyond the arc. Ausar Thompson is not a floor spacer whatsoever. He's a great defender, great ball handler, great in transition. I don't think he is a floor spacer as of yet. He may become league average, but I'm not going to put any money down on that. And then you draft Ron Holland, who is basically the same player. I mean, he's great in transition. He has defensive upside, but once again, that jump shot is very inconsistent. And if you find a way where both of these guys are in the rotation, I just don't think the floor spacing for that team is going to be great. Now, they did hire a new jump shot coach who fixed Lonzo Ball's jump shot, so there is some light there that this team could be a little bit better from like deep in the arc and just around the 3-point line in general, but that's not something I'm going to be banking on this season. I still think this defense is going to be one of the worst in the league. I still think this offense is going to be one of the worst in the league. The Pistons are just going to have a slow grind into getting back into contingency. Now at number 12, I'm going to have the Chicago Bulls here, and this is a team that it's very confusing with the Chicago Bulls, and they're kind of in no man's land. This offseason, they made a trade from sending Alex Caruso to the OKC Thunder and bringing back Josh Giddey. You also have Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu. You make a move to send DeMar DeRozan over to the Kings, and you bring back Chris Duarte and 2 second-round picks. You draft Modest Buzelis, who is probably the bright light in a dark room for this entire offseason. But the people are saying that the best thing that the Chicago Bulls could have did this offseason was choose a direction. And I think they did choose a direction. They want to be bad, but they kind of waited to really pick their direction. At the trade deadline, there were multiple offers for Alex Caruso that contained 3 to 4 first-round picks. You guys did not make any trades. Same with DeMar DeRozan. You guys did not make any trades. I think Nikola Vucevic could have been moved at the deadline as well. You guys did not make any trades. So now you're still sitting on Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic, who is going to produce wins, and then you did not get any picks back or any first-round picks for DeMar DeRozan or Alex Caruso. Now, I don't think Josh Giddey is just the worst player in the world, like a lot of people are saying. I think Josh Giddey was not used properly in OKC, which once again is okay because you have a ball-dominant player in SGA. I just don't think having Josh Giddey next to SGA was what's best for Josh Giddey's game. Josh Giddey is not an athletic player. He's not a great floor spacer. And what you guys were asking him to do was really catch and shoot 3-pointers, and that's just not his game. And when he is making those threes, it just doesn't really affect the game as much. So now Josh Giddey is going to be asked to have a better role in Chicago where he's going to be the lead ball handler, which I don't really understand that either because Kobe White is coming off of his best season in his career and he was the lead guard for that team. And then Ayo Dosunmu is averaging 18 points per game as a starter. He's a great on-ball defender. He's very solid. He can hit the 3 ball. He can work with the ball in his hand. I think that should have been the building blocks of this team. And now you throw Josh Giddey into it, who's another guard. You throw in Lonzo Ball, who's going to be healthy this season. He's another guard. Zach LaVine, he's another guard. And now you're going to be banking on Zach LaVine building his trade value throughout the entire season, and that may lead to some wins. And you guys do not have the luxury to be winning games. You guys have a top 10 protected pick this year, and if it falls outside the top 10, it's going to San Antonio. It's going to San Antonio. So I do not think this team has the leverage to be winning right now, but you still have players that are going to get you wins night in and night out. Zach LaVine is probably going to get you more wins than you want to. Nikola Vucevic is probably going to get you more wins than you want to, on top of having Kobe White, who's probably going to be a lot better than he was last season. So it's very confusing with the Chicago Bulls team. And there are talks that they want to be competitive this year when I don't think they should be competitive. I mean, I think you should really let go of Zach LaVine and really move him as fast as you possibly can. The second his trade value is as high as it possibly can, which will probably be around the trade deadline, you make the trade. It does not matter if you are getting anything back whatsoever from Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine, once again, is not a terrible player. If we just take a look at Zach LaVine when he average, or let's just take a look at when Zach LaVine got to, let's take all that out. Let's just take a look at from 2020 to 2023. Zach LaVine was giving you 25 points per game, 39% from 3 on 7 assists or 7 attempts, 5 rebounds per a game, 5 assists per game, and 61% true shooting. And we have a trend in the NBA where we talk about players' inefficiencies when they're not on the floor. We talk about it with Ja Morant. We talk about it with Joel Embiid when he's not playing. We talk about it with Zach LaVine as of now. There are things that people forget. Zach LaVine is still very athletic. He's still a very good shooter. He can still create with the ball in his hand. And I think him being a number 3 option on a really good team is what's going to bring the best out of Zach LaVine. I mean, when you look at the injury history and when you look at the contract situation, that is what really makes Zach LaVine a player that not a lot of teams want to trade for, instead of it being his play style. This is a guy that can shoot really well. And this is an NBA where I think you cannot have too many floor spacers in the NBA. You just can't. If you have floor spacers all around the floor, that is the go-to in the NBA. But when we look at Zach LaVine's contract, this year he's going to be making around $43 million. Next year he's going to be making just under $46 million. And 2026 to 2027, he's going to be making $48 million, and he's going to have a player option, which 9 times out of 10 he's going to opt into. So that contract for that level of player in Zach LaVine may be very ugly, and I can understand that. But when you talk about a player who is going to be great offensively in almost any situation you put him in, I believe, I don't think he is as untradeable as a lot of people would think, and especially not his play style. I do not think it's the play style. I think it's the injury history. I think it's the contract situation. And with the new CBA, that is completely justifiable. It is completely justifiable to not want a guy like Zach LaVine on your team, because he's going to be making north of $43 million for the next 3 seasons. So if I'm Chicago, it does not matter what offer I get. It doesn't matter what offer I get for Zach LaVine. I'm pulling the trigger. You want him off your team at any means necessary. I think that's a win. If you get Zach LaVine off your deal, it is a win. And it's not even like you can trade him to a bad team, because this isn't a player that's not going to provide wins for a team. Like, the Brooklyn Nets came out and said, we are willing to trade for bad contracts if we can get picks, and we'll take on the bad contract. But Zach LaVine is a player that's going to produce wins, and the Brooklyn Nets do not want to win. They do not want to win this season. So you can't move him to Brooklyn, because some people would think, oh yeah, just Ben Simmons is making $40 million. Send Zach LaVine over to the Bulls, or send Zach LaVine over to the Brooklyn Nets. You bring in Ben Simmons, and that money is off your books. Zach LaVine is going to provide way too much wins for this Brooklyn Nets team. You have Zach LaVine and Cam Thomas. That would be nasty, though. That would be kind of nasty. So all in all, I think the Bulls are probably going to be like 25 to 30 games. They're probably going to win about 25 to 30 games this season. I don't expect them to be in the play-in again, but if I were the Bulls, I'd move off Zach LaVine as fast as possible, and I would really get this tank started, because with Zach LaVine on the team, you're probably going to win more games than you would like. After the Chicago Bulls, I have the Toronto Raptors at number 11. And the Toronto Raptors are interesting because I think Scotty Barnes is a hell of a player. He averaged about 20 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists, solid defensively. You have RJ Barrett with the Toronto Raptors, averaged about 22, 6, and 4, and he was pretty efficient at that as well. I don't think he's going to be holding that up throughout the entire season. I think Immanuel Quickley is a great defender. I think he's going to get a lot better as a playmaker this season, and that's what really questions me about them moving in the future. I don't know if Scotty Barnes is the number one that we look at Anthony Edwards or Tyrese Halliburton or Paolo Banchero. I don't know if he's going to progress to that level that we think those guys are going to progress to. So you would love to bring in somebody else in the draft, but are the Raptors going to be bad enough to get a top 5 pick and for sure be able to bring in one of those prospects? This team is still going to be very exciting to watch. I think with Immanuel Quickley and Scotty Barnes, this team is going to bring in a lot of fans and be excited for this team in the future. But as of right now, I think guys like Grady Dick and Jacoby Walter are going to be some good young guys that can be glue guys for this team. But I would just love to see an absolute number one. And I'm not saying Scotty Barnes is not going to become that, but as of right now, it's pretty up in the air. I would love to see him be a little bit more consistent from 3. I would love to see him be a better on-ball creator. I think he's about 49% in post-up plays. I think he's 44th percentile in pick and roll and then 19th percentile in isolation creation. That's not the best for somebody who you're going to be looking at to be the guy on this team long term. I do not think that's the best. Up next, I have the Charlotte Hornets at number 10, and this is a team that I think can make a play-in, but when we look at this team and the health for this team, especially LaMelo Ball, I think it all rests on his shoulders. Right now, I think LaMelo is the building block of the future, him and Brandon Miller, and we've seen some very inconsistent years from LaMelo Ball. I think his shot creation is great, but I don't think his shot selection is the best. I think him and Brandon Miller fit perfectly together with Brandon Miller's shot creation and how he's able to play in the fast break and how he's able to play in transition. I think he shows signs defensively. I think LaMelo Ball shows signs defensively. It's all about that coming together. And on top of them, bringing in Tre Mann, who upgraded significantly. He went from 9 minutes a game in OKC to going to 30 minutes a game in Charlotte. I don't think he's going to be the starting shooting guard for the Charlotte Hornets. I think it's going to be Josh Green, or maybe you just move Josh Green to the 3 and have Brandon Miller play the 2, and then you have a guy like Miles Bridges, who's a great rebounder. He's very athletic. He can stretch the floor, and then you have Mark Williams, who is another guy who needs to be healthy consistently. So if we bring in a team like this Hornets team who has questions around their health, if they can be healthy, which is a pretty tall task for a guy like LaMelo Ball, this team could definitely be a team that could be scary and a team that could be scary in the play-in conversation. I think LaMelo Ball, when fully healthy, is a top 10 caliber point guard. I mean, he's probably one of the best playmakers in the league in general. Up next, we have another team in the Atlanta Hawks who may be in a tough situation, a team that committed a lot to the DeJounte Murray and Trae Young backcourt, and it did not work out as well. As we know, Trae Young is probably one of the worst off-ball players in the league. As we talk about lead guards or in the top 10, he's probably one of the worst off-ball players in the NBA. Just when we look at his volume when he has the ball in his hand and the game that is predicated with him having the ball in his hand, I just don't think that worked out as well as the Atlanta Hawks would have wanted it to. But now you have a team with Dyson Daniels, who's about 6'7", 6'8", next to Trae Young. You bring in Zachary Reese-Shea, who you would like to space the floor coming into this season, maybe attack closeouts a little well. But I think this team's success is going to ride on Trae Young and Jalen Johnson a lot. I think Clint Capella is going to be moved at the deadline, but Jalen Johnson being a guy who can rebound well, who's very athletic, can hit the outside shot, can put the ball on the floor, you're going to be banking on his progression more than almost anything. I think there is a world that Jalen Johnson can be a fringe all-star this season. I mean, this season he was giving us about 16 points per game, about 9 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shot 35% from 3. And if I think he can jump that up to maybe 19 points per game, 20 points per game, maybe 8, 9 rebounds again, and shoot 38, 37% from 3, which may be asking a lot, I think this Atlanta Hawks team is better than what they were last season just because the team is so much better with the ball in Trae Young's hands. This is a guy who is one of the best playmakers in the league. He is a very good shooter. This is a guy just like LaMelo Ball, in my opinion, who has to work on his shot selection. But we have had some underrating of Trae Young this past season just because of how the Hawks looked without him and having DeJounte Murray run the floor. But I just think Trae Young is the significantly better player. And I think your ceiling is a lot higher with Trae Young being your lead guy. Like, there were conversations that Trae Young is going to be the guy that gets traded and DeJounte Murray is going to be the guy that sticks around and you guys are going to build around him and Jalen Johnson, which I'm so glad they did not do. Up next, I have the Miami Heat, and this is a team that has had a lot of success in the earlier years with them being a 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think the 2021-2022 season. They went to the NBA Finals in 2020, and they went to the NBA Finals in 2023. And I think with these Cinderella runs they had, especially in 2023, we begin to overrate how good this team really is. I think we didn't really look at the luck they had when they went to the NBA Finals in 2023. The role players like Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, these guys were playing out of their minds. They had to go up against a hobbled Milwaukee Bucks team. But now you bring back Jimmy Butler, who is looking for a deal from the Miami Heat. You have Bam Adebayo, who is a top 20 player, top 25 player in the league, in my opinion. You have Jaime Jaquez, who's very physical down low. He can hit the outside shot. I really like Jaime Jaquez's game. Nikola Jovic has made some strides to being a better player. He can put the ball on the floor. He can stretch the floor. You draft Kel'el Ware, who I think in the future will be the starting five next to Bam Adebayo. And you also have Terry Rozier, who was not there in the playoffs. Tyler Hero, who's probably going to be a 19 to, or maybe like a 17 to 20 point player for this Miami Heat team. And when we look at how it all fits together, I think they're going to be respectable defensively. I think they're going to be a middle of the pack offense. But when we look at how good the Eastern Conference has gotten, I just don't think the teams that are above them, they can be better than. I don't think there's a world they can be better than the Magic. I don't think they can be better than the Bucks, Pacers, Knicks, 76ers, Celtics. I don't think they can be better than any of these teams. But with you have the head coaching of Eric Spoelstra, how good this team is as a unit defensively, I think that's what's going to bring in a lot of wins for them. I think Jimmy Butler is going to play a lot better than he did last year. I think he averaged about 21, 5 and 5 last year. I think this year we're probably going to get 24 points per game, maybe 6 and 6, maybe better efficiency, especially better health, in my opinion. And this team's going to be respectable. I mean, nobody's going to want to really see Miami in the first round, but I think it's going to be more of just giving a really good team a tough series instead of them going back to a conference finals or a NBA finals. At number 7, I might be a little bit lower on this team than a lot of other people. At number 7, I might be a little lower on this team than other teams are or other people are, and that is the Orlando Magic. I think the Orlando Magic are going to be a top 5 defense this year with Jonathan Isaac, Jalen Suggs, KCP. Franz Wagner is also a very solid defender. Wendell Carter can be a solid defender. But when we look at this offense, man, I don't think KCP just comes in and saves what they were trying to do on offense. Yes, he is a step up in the right direction. Yes, he is a floor spacer, shot 41% from 3 last season, but I just don't think that saves this entire offense. And this is a team that needs floor spacing because Paolo Banchero is a player that likes to work in the mid-range area. He likes to make these tough shots. And when you are asking a player to make these tough shots, it helps a lot more when you get more one-on-one opportunities. And Paolo Banchero is just not able to do that. He is very inefficient around the rim. He is not good at the free throw line. And those are things that he is, in my opinion, going to get better at. But this season, it's not really making it the easiest for him. Franz Wagner is very inconsistent from 3. Jalen Suggs is very inconsistent from 3. Wendell Carter Jr. is not the most consistent floor spacer as a big either way anyway. So when we look at this Orlando Magic team, I think it's just going to be them. They're going to win games predicated off of their defense and how good Paolo Banchero is going to be able to be. I think he is going to get better this season. He has gotten better from his first to his second, and I think it's going to be the same for his second to his third. But when we look at this team with Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, these guys, I don't know if I'm going to be counting on to make threes. And guys like Jet Howard, who shot about 38% from 3 on 7 attempts in college, he may get some minutes when it comes to somebody hitting threes. Or Tristan da Silva, who shot 40% or better from 3 on about 5 attempts in college. He may get some minutes because they are going to need players who are going to come in and make 3 points. And we saw it against the Cleveland Cavaliers. It was times in this series where they just could not generate offense due to guys like Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, guys like Jonathan Isaac, those guys just not being able to hit the outside shot. And it's not even like the Cleveland Cavaliers played awful in that series, or the Cleveland Cavaliers had a great 3-point shooting series either. They did not shoot well from 3 either. So my concerns with this Magic team after the playoffs is still a concern going into this season. I don't think they made the necessary jump in their floor spacing for them to be a serious contender just yet. This defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. This defense is going to make it very hard for a team to beat them in a 7-game series. And I definitely think that against guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey. Did I say Jalen Tatum? I hope I didn't. I think in multiple of these series, they're going to be able to guard. I think they can guard Donovan Mitchell well. I think they can guard Tyrese Halliburton well. I think they can guard Pascal Siakam well. I think Jonathan Isaac is going to play a lot more this season. As far as minutes-wise, I definitely think he's going to play a lot more this season. But once again, how far can that defense carry you if these guys on offense is not hitting shots? And then you're just going to get to a point where the Knicks are going to knock down their threes. The Celtics are going to knock down the threes. The Pacers are going to knock down their threes. And it really concerns me because even when the Cavs did not shoot the best in that first round series, they still hit more shots than the Magic did. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how this offense improves, especially with KCP. I think Jet Howard and Tristan da Silva are going to be asked to get a lot of minutes, or more minutes than you would think, because their ability to space the floor. I think they can do that at a pretty decent level, so where they're going to get some minutes when guys are just not hitting their shots. Up next, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers at the number 6 spot in my power rankings for the Eastern Conference. This is a team that I think just are not prioritizing what can make this team win. And I think that is Evan Mobley at the 5. And I think that is Donovan Mitchell being the lead guard. I think if you could have just, and I know this is probably a hypothetical because they just re-signed Jared Allen, and I think Darius Garland is going to stick around too. I just don't think that Evan Mobley provides the floor spacing for him and Jared Allen to work. And instead of banking on Evan Mobley getting better from the outside or just being a better offensive player in general every single season, you should move Jared Allen and move Evan Mobley to the 5. I think Evan Mobley is probably, in my opinion, he's a top 3 defender in the world. Evan Mobley is a top 3 defender in the world. You can quote me on that. But he's just not the offensive player to be playing the power forward in today's NBA. If it was 2004, I think Evan Mobley would be one of the better power forwards in the game with how his game is played. But how offenses play, with how you're supposed to space the floor, even when it comes down to the center position, I just don't think him and Jared Allen work together. I think Jared Allen is an all-league type of defender as well, but I think Evan Mobley's upside to play in the pick and roll, to play out in space, to be a post defender, to be a shot blocker, I think is just altogether better than Jared Allen's. And the same can be said about Darius Garland. I think Darius Garland is a great point guard, do not get me wrong, but I just don't think his fit next to Donovan Mitchell is the best, especially when you have two guys that are 6'2", 6'3". I just think their front court is way too big. It's not really spacing the floor properly for a guy like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland to go to work. And I think their backcourt is too small to where they're not going to be able to defend at a high level. And I think the type of offense that Kenny Atkinson runs is going to be heavily predicated on Evan Mobley being able to make these shots. And if he cannot do that, this offense is going to be very, very stagnant. It's going to be very, very inconsistent, and it's going to lead to some losses. And it's going to be tough in the playoffs when people are daring Evan Mobley to hit that outside shot. And it's going to be harder for guys like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell to really put points up on the board. So I think I've been saying this pretty much all offseason, where it's just a lot better, in my opinion, if Evan Mobley plays the 5 position. And he was really good at it against Boston. He was finishing down low. He was passing out of the pick and roll. He was playing good defense on Jason Tatum and Paolo Banchero in the playoffs. He was defending the rim. I think Evan Mobley's game is a lot better at the 5 position, and we've seen it for the past 2 to 3 seasons, and the Cavs are just ignoring it. Now, there is a lot. I don't think there is much that the Cavs can do after re-signing Jared Allen. I think Darius Garland does have some decent trade value for a team that's trying to upgrade at that position, but I don't know. I just think this team has a ceiling that they just cannot reach if Evan Mobley does not play the 5. And don't get me wrong, if he starts knocking down his jump shots at a respectable level next season, hey, I was wrong. But we've been banking on that for the past couple of seasons now, and it just has not panned out. And instead, I think it's just very irresponsible to keep basing your entire offense on if Evan Mobley can hit the outside shot. And if he just can't do it, then you have to move him to the 5, because this is a guy that is, once again, like I said, top 3 defender in the league, in my opinion. And this is a guy who can still be very effective at the 5. There are things that show in his game that he could be very effective at the center position, and he just won't be moved there because you just re-signed Jared Allen. You just extended Jared Allen. So you have to find a way for this power forward and center duo and Evan Mobley and Jared Allen to really work. Now, do I think it will work? If that jump shot comes around, I think it will work. But if it doesn't, and we have not seen it for the past 2 to 3 seasons, it just will not work out if you ask me. It just won't work out. At number 5, I have the Indiana Pacers, who are coming off of a Eastern Conference Finals appearance. Now, the people who they played were very injured. Damian Lillard missed 2 out of 6 games in the first round. Giannis missed that entire series. And then they played the New York Knicks, who had about 6 or 7 key rotational pieces not playing. When we talk about Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, I think Mitchell Robinson missed some time in that series as well. Jalen Brunson missed the second half of Game 7. It was just a very lucky run for Indiana, but that does not take away from how good I think they are. I think with Tyrese Halliburton, you just have a walking top 5 offense. I think they have great floor spaces around him, whether it be Andrew Nembhard, whether it be Benedict Mathurin, whether it be Miles Turner, whether it be Pascal Siakam. And a lot of people are saying that this Pacers team was a fraud. And I think it's going to be hard to beat this team in a 7-game series, man. And it's really the opposite of the Magic. I mean, the Magic, I think it makes it hard for them to lose or hard to beat them in a 7-game series, which I still think it can be done, of course, but it's going to be a tough out because of their defense. But the Pacers, with how fast they play, with the floor spacers they have, with how Tyrese Halliburton is probably one of the better off-ball lead guards in the NBA. Steph Curry's up there. I think Tyrese Halliburton, with his spot-up shooting and just the way he was able to score before injury, I think that's going to make it very tough. Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton fit together like a glove. I think having this whole offseason to really work things out with those two, I think is going to make it a lot better. And this defense is not as bad as people are saying. Andrew Nembhard's a great point of attack defender. Benedict Mathurin can show signs of being a good defender. Aaron Nesmith was another great point of attack defender. And Miles Turner, who's just not the defender he once was, he still is a solid shot blocker for this unit. And a guy that I don't think is talked about enough, I think Jarace Walker can really find some really solid minutes for this Indiana Pacers team if he can come in and be that versatile, switchable defender that him being 6'8", 6'9", can really work out for him. As we know, this team has re-signed Obi Toppin, who showed some really good signs in the playoffs, and that kind of makes Jarace Walker's minutes go down a little bit. But this team could still use a defender with the size and length and strength of Jarace Walker. And I think if he really locks in on that defensive side, the Pacers are going to have no choice but to give him minutes. You have TJ McConnell coming off the bench. You have Ben Shepherd, who's a great 3-and-D player that I've seen in the playoffs. This team's really deep. And if they were to go up against the Bucks fully healthy again, I'm not gonna lie, I'd pick the Pacers. I think the Bucks defense is just not capable of stopping what this Pacers team can do. The Pacers are going to score a lot faster, and I think the Pacers are going to force the Bucks to play the way that the Pacers play instead of the Bucks forcing the Pacers to play the way the Bucks play. This team is very young. This team can hit shots. This team is very athletic. This team can move up and down the floor, where the Bucks are more solely predicated off their half-court offense. They're very old. I think Brook Lopez they're going to force Brook Lopez's hand to play in space. I would pick the Pacers to win this series fully healthy going into the season. If they were to see each other again, maybe it could be 4 seed versus 5th seed. I would take the Pacers. I'm not going to lie. I would take the Pacers. Speaking about the Milwaukee Bucks, the next team I have is the Milwaukee Bucks at the number 4 position. And Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think they really dropped the ball with how they could have ran this offense. I think Damian Lillard and Giannis in the pick and roll is absolutely phenomenal. And Damian Lillard is a player that a lot of people are saying was down after this season, which I do think he had a pretty underwhelming season. I think he averaged about 24 points per game. Right, this year, Damian Lillard shot about 35% from 3, 24 points per game on 7 assists. While Giannis averaged about 30, 11, and 6 on his most efficient season in his career. So I think if this duo plays its hand how it's supposed to, I think this duo can be one of the best in the league, maybe like top 3. Because when you look at a player like Damian Lillard who has a solid level of shot creation, I don't think he relies the most on him getting downhill anymore. I think he relies a lot more on that jump shot, which could make sense with how his efficiency dropped. But what really concerns me for this Bucks team is the defense. I know their offense is going to be able to put up points. I trust Chris Middleton in the playoffs. I trust Dame. I trust Giannis. But the defense around Damian Lillard isn't the best. I think Giannis is still an all-league defender, tier of defender, but Brook Lopez has noticeably taken a step back. I don't trust Gary Trent Jr. to be that good on defense that he protects Damian Lillard's flaws. And when we look at a team like the Boston Celtics or a team like the New York Knicks who are going to be hunting mismatches, I think this is where the Bucks could take a fall off, if you were to ask me. But right now, I still have them at my 4th spot. I still think they're going to be a very respectable team, but the defense is going to be a big concern, and that's where I lie with the Bucks. Their offense is going to be great, but I think their defense is going to be very bad. I think it's going to be because of Damian Lillard's lack of defense, his lack to get through screens, his lack to be very engaged off ball, or just to be engaged on that side as a whole. At number 2, I have the Philadelphia 76ers, and this is a team where a lot is riding on their shoulders, especially the health. I know Paul George is coming off of probably the most games he's played in a season since he was with the Oklahoma City Thunder, 74 games this season. I think he averaged about 22, 23 points per game. Still a phenomenal spot-up shooter. Tyrese Maxey played his tail off in the playoffs last year. He averaged 30 a game. Joel Embiid looked like he was going to be the back-to-back MVP player before he went down. I think he only played about 40-some games this season, averaging about 35 and 11 last season. He was truly dominant. And if this team is fully healthy, I think Joel Embiid is good enough to lead this team to an NBA Finals appearance. And the one thing that the Boston Celtics have a weakness against is how they play against dominant big men. That's why we would have loved to see a matchup of the Nuggets versus the Celtics. That's why I give the Milwaukee Bucks just a small fighting chance. And this is why I would give the 76ers some type of fighting chance, because Joel Embiid is so dominant down low. And if he is just not as banged up as he has been in the past few years of the playoffs, they may have a shot against Boston. Now, do I think they're going to beat Boston? No. But if Joel Embiid can play to a high level that we know he can play, it may be difficult. I think the real conversation around the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be if there are guys surrounding PG, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid can really show up. Guys like Caleb Martin, Kelly Oubre, Jared McCain, guys like Andre Drummond off the bench, even Reggie Jackson. I just don't think you have a high level of role players for me to think that this team is a championship contender outside of their top 3 guys. Now, I know there are moments where Caleb Martin does play well. Kelly Oubre plays well. Jared McCain is a rookie. I don't know if we can really put that type of weight on him yet. But to beat a team like Boston or maybe even New York, you're going to have to get things from guys like Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre. And there are going to have to be nights that this guy is the reason why you won. And I just truly don't think the Philadelphia 76ers have that, or they can get that as much as they're going to get it from Boston or New York. So that's what really stops me from thinking they can be a championship or a title contender, because they don't have the role players that teams like Boston and New York really have. And I don't necessarily think their defense is going to be I don't think they're going to be top 10 to 13 in the league. I think there are some teams in the league that are going to have a better defense than them. I think, at least in the Eastern Conference, I think the Knicks and Celtics are going to be a better defense. I think the Cavs and Magic are going to be a better defense. And those are just 4 off the top of my head. At number 2, we have the New York Knicks, who have been very busy this offseason. They go and trade for Mikal Bridges. They bring back OG Anunoby. They go and trade Julius Randle for Karl Anthony Towns. And the Knicks understand that this is their window to win the championship. You have Jalen Brunson, who took a $113 million pay cut to stay with his team. You brought back Josh Hart. You still have OG and Mikal Bridges. This team is going to be very good offensively, and their defense is going to be very, very good. Some people are pointing towards the Karl Anthony Towns at the 5 minutes, which could be very concerning. But once Mitchell Robinson comes back, if he is able to stay healthy, I think this defense is going to be very tough. And you also have Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, who can probably be the best wing defensive duo in the league. Or actually, I'm actually confident that they are the best wing defensive duo in the league, with OG's strength and how he's able to move around and guard multiple positions, and how Mikal Bridges is very lengthy and very quick on his feet and able to guard some of the guards in the NBA. Now place that on top of the floor spacing you're going to have with a projected starting lineup opening night of Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, and Karl Anthony Towns. I think that is like a top 3 starting lineup in the NBA. And now Karl Anthony Towns is going to be able to space the floor, so Jalen Brunson has more room to work in the mid-range. He has more room to get downhill. He has more room to bait people for fouls. I think this offense is going to be phenomenal. And at number 1, we have the Boston Celtics. I think everybody knew going into the NBA season that the Boston Celtics were number 1, not only in the Eastern Conference, but in the entire NBA. I think this team can repeat. I think this team works perfectly together. Their offense is just as good as their defense, and their defense is just as good as their offense. And it's going to make this team tough to beat, man. They just have such a group of great, versatile defenders. You had moments where Jason Tatum was guarding the 5. You can have moments where Jrue Holiday is guarding some of the bigger wings. Some of these guys are just really good, man. These guys are really good. And Kristaps Porzingis is going to miss half the season, and you're not even as concerned as if it was another team missing their number 3 option. Like if let's just say the Philadelphia 76ers did not have Paul George for half the season. With their depth, I don't know if we still look at I would think that is a problem for the 76ers, but the Boston Celtics are just so well-rounded. They're so well coached. They have phenomenal defenders at every position. It's going to be tough to beat this team this season, man. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was my number 1 through number 15 power ranking for the Eastern Conference. If you guys have anything you disagree with, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate everybody watching. I appreciate everybody liking, commenting, and subscribing. And if you guys like this type of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. I will see you again for Ball Dominance on Thursday, where we talk about the Western Conference power rankings 1 through 15. So once again, if you guys like this type of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Ball Dominant will be coming out 2 times a week, Monday and Thursday, covering the entire NBA season. And if you guys like high level of conversation every Monday and Thursday, be sure to subscribe. I'm out. Peace.